Now, my mom had a plan that she was going to leave El Salvador and come to the United States, but only be here for a year just to be able to make maybe a couple $1,000s, and go back to her country and take care of her family. That was her plan. Well, as we all know in this room, plans change. Now, what I'm going to share with you today is, what do you do when that plan changes? What do you do when all of a sudden now you're outside of the comfort zone that you love to be in, but something has happened that has shaked your foundation, and now you're in a new place? It's this moment. What do you do here? How do you make it work here? So my mom came to this country, and her plan changed when she met my father. And then her plan really changed when on June 14th, 1983, in Shreveport, Louisiana, this guy was born. So my mom was like, okay, now this was not a part of my plan at all. Well, her plan changed even more when I was 9 months old and my father decided to leave. My father left. So my mom was left with a choice, because in those moments when you're at your worst and everything does not seem to be going your way, a lot of times we feel that we lose, just because we lose maybe clothes or money or things that we can physically touch or see, we feel that we lose it all. However, I disagree, because I've been through some things in my life, and I think the one thing, despite whatever it is that you feel like you've lost, the one thing you don't lose is the ability to make a choice and to take control. I really believe that. So my mother made a choice. She said, do I take my only son and go to El Salvador so we can be with family, or do I stay in this country and allow him to take advantage of the opportunities that he has being born here? Well, her choice was to stay here. Didn't know any English, didn't have a lot, but she stayed here and she worked. Well, I grew up in Shreveport, Louisiana, and I lived there till I was 9 years old. And at 9 years old, I had this comfort zone. I mean, I went to the same school. I had this, I saw the same teachers every day. I mean, the same kids. I went to the same park, same neighborhood, everything. I had this comfort zone. Everything was fine for me. But then all of a sudden, when I was 9 years old, my mom came to me and she kind of shook my world up, and she said, we're going to move. Now, I was kind of accustomed to moving because we had moved to different houses. And I said to her, I was like, okay, where are we moving? Thinking to myself, we're just going to the next house, maybe the next neighborhood over, but nothing's really going to change besides the size of my room or where exactly my room is in the house. That's the only thing that's going to change for me. Well, she said, well, we're actually going to move to another state. And I said, okay, well, where are we moving to? She said, we're going to move to Arkansas. Exactly. As silent as this room was when I said that, that was exactly my reaction when my mother told me we're moving to Arkansas. Exactly. And then I was like, where in Arkansas? Because the only thing I had ever heard of was Little Rock. And she said, well, we're not moving to Little Rock. We're going to move to a town called Hope. Another silent moment. I was like, what is Hope? Why are we moving to Hope? And she says, well, the one thing about Hope, Arkansas, it's a small town. There's a better job opportunity there for me, so we're going to move. At 9 years old, you don't really have much of an option. You don't have much of a choice. You can't tell your mother, no, we're not going to move. You just have to go with it. So, of course, I was taken out of my comfort zone, and now I'm in Hope, Arkansas, 3rd grade, and I'm being teased. Brand new kid, Hispanic, they found out my middle name was Renee, which all of you are the kids that I had to deal with. You are the kids. I'm 29 years old, and I'm still trying to explain to people that Renee with one E is the guy's way of spelling Renee. Any other way is the girl's way. And so I would get teased because I was new, because I had this Cajun accent, and because they found out my middle name was Renee. So I would come home and I would tell Mom, like, Mom, everybody's picking on me. They found out my middle name's Renee. And she would say, this is literally what she would say to me. She's like, pero mijo, en El Salvador, el nombre de Renee es un nombre de un hombre. Which means, she was telling me, Renee is a masculine name in El Salvador. 9 years old, this is what I responded with. But we don't live in El Salvador. It doesn't matter that it's a man's name in El Salvador. We live in Hope, Arkansas. Nobody cares. It is a girl's name, and I'm getting teased for it. So I didn't like Hope, Arkansas, needless to say. But I had no choice. Like, I was there for a reason. There was a reason that I was there. And it's in those moments we all have to learn how to adapt and overcome. 2 words, adapt and overcome. And we have to believe and we have to trust that we have what it takes to be able to do those 2 things. In the moments when we feel like we can't, we have to be able to trust and know that we can do those 2 things. Now, all of us are fighting a war. All of us are fighting a battle. There's the economy. There's illnesses. There's relationships that are broken up. There's all these different things out there in the world that we're all facing. But in those moments when we find ourselves in the darkest place, in the deepest hole, we have to believe that we can adapt and overcome, and we will adapt and overcome. So my way to adapt to this situation was I needed to find a way to kind of just click with the kids. And what worked for me was all of a sudden I found football, the game of football. And I mean football, not soccer. And just being clear, some people thought I played soccer, and I was like, no. I do not have the stamina or the endurance to actually run up and down a field and not touch the ball at all. It's pointless to me. I support it because Hope Solo was on Dancing with the Stars, and she's a beautiful girl. She was sweet, but at the end of the day, it's like, I think I have ADD. I've never been diagnosed with it, but I think I have it. And I do not have the personality to play soccer, because I would totally be on the other end of the field, like the ball's way over there, which is like how many yards away. I'm just standing here. I think I would just probably play with the grass, and before you know it, they would score a goal because I was too busy occupied on something else. But I found the game of football, and I started to play football, and all of a sudden I realized that I was good, and it was my tool in order to be accepted by the kids, because I was a pretty good athlete. So now all of a sudden nobody cared that I had this Cajun accent, nobody cared that my middle name was Renee, nobody cared that I was the new kid. Everybody cared the fact that I was a good athlete, I was a good football player, and I was accepted. Now, once I was accepted, I was happy and I enjoyed playing the game of football, but then I joined this brotherhood of kids all over the world, and all of a sudden in my mind, I wanted to be a professional football player when I grow up. That's what I wanted to do. That was my long-term goal. Now, it's important to have goals, but sometimes we have a tendency to get long-term goals and short-term goals confused. Big goals and small goals. And sometimes we feel that if we don't have the big goal, like someone sitting at our table, then we're discouraged to having our own goal. It may be something as simple as, I just want to get through the week, I want to get through this conference, I want to get through this month, I want to get through this day. It's a small goal. Some of us have big goals to say, I want to accomplish this by the end of the month, I want to accomplish this by the end of the year, I want to accomplish this by the time that I'm 30, 40, whatever, right? So I set this long-term goal for myself that I wanted to be a professional football player one day. I wanted to be in the NFL. Because I love the game of football, because I saw it on TV, I wanted kids to wear a jersey with my name on the back. I wanted to make an amazing living for myself and for my family. That was my long-term goal. Long-term goals, what it does, it provides vision. It allows you to visually see yourself there. But the short-term goal, the reason why they work hand in hand is it provides the motivation. So my short-term goals was I needed to learn more about the game of football. I needed to become a better athlete. I needed to become a student of the game. I needed to do all these things. So I started working hard every single day of learning all these things about football, going to the gym when I could. I mean, football was my life. Football was everything for me. So if I wasn't playing it in school, I would play it at the park with my friends. If my friends weren't able to come out or there wasn't enough of us, then what I would do is I would just sit at home and watch it on TV. If it wasn't on TV, then I had my video game, and I would actually play it in my video game. Everything, my life was surrounded by football. Well, the one thing about Hope, Arkansas, and one of the reasons that I found out later that my mom decided to move there was because, she's a single mom. I'm the only son. And she felt that if I was surrounded and influenced by negative things, and if I got involved in these negative things, that physically, because my mom's 4'11", I'm a guy, I've learned, you take care of yourself. You protect yourself. Because one time I was speaking somewhere, and I was on a stage, and I was on fire. Not literally, but I mean, I was on a roll. You get what I'm saying. So I was like on a roll, and I was talking about my mom, and I literally was like, my mom's 4'11", and I just kept it moving, just kept talking with my hand up, 4'11", and I just kept going. When I was done speaking, this guy moves, and all of a sudden there's this cute little old lady right behind him, and she comes up to me. She says, I have two things to say to you. One, I enjoy, blah, blah. She goes on to that. But she said, the second thing, and probably the most important thing that I wanted to say to you, and she grabs my right hand, and she says, 4'11" is not down here. It's up here. I was like, so now, because guys, we learn, you give women more, right? And my mom's been trying to get 5 feet for 56 years now, so now I give her a little bit more than that. So, I cover myself, so no woman that's 4'11" or below will come up to me later and, measure, help me measure, figure it out. So my mom's 4'11", so she felt that if I was influenced negatively by a lot of bad things, that physically she would not be able to stop me. So she felt, let me put him somewhere where there's nothing. She succeeded. Her first accomplishment as a mother, she succeeded in putting me in a town where there was nothing. The highlight of Hope, Arkansas, it was the home of former President Bill Clinton. Yes. And also, in August, which is actually pretty cool, there's a big watermelon festival that happens. If you're around the area, you should check it out. I mean, I love watermelon now. Now, I lived in New York for a while, and I remember one time, because all my children used to be taped here, actually about 10, 15 blocks up from here. And in the break room, I'd get watermelon, and I'd put salt on it. I know there's a lot of Southern people that put salt on yeah, don't be shy. And I would put salt, and here you have all these actors, and they're like, what are you doing? Like, sodium, no. And I'm like, what? That's how we do it in Arkansas. Like, we put salt on watermelon. It brings out the richness, the taste. And they're like, no, you can't put, no, we don't. They didn't get it. So one thing about Hope, Arkansas, when I was 9, yes, it was a boring town. It was small. There was nothing to do. I loved football. But then as I got older, I started to realize that it was different. I started to realize that Hope, Arkansas is not that, it's a small town, but it's not as innocent as it necessarily looked to me when I was 9 years old. Because one day in class or on the football field, I would see, one of the kids in school, but then the next day they'd be somewhere else. Why? Because there was a lot of negative things around. These kids were, there was drugs, there was gangs, there was violence, there was all these things that were surrounding me. And I kept seeing my friends one day would be here, the next day they're somewhere else. So I started to say to myself, you know what, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. I want to be somewhere else. I feel like I'm limited if I stay here, and I want to branch outside of this, and I want to go somewhere else. I want to take a risk. I want to move to another place. And I had heard growing up that if you're going to play high school football, you need to be in one of 3 places, either Texas, Florida, or Georgia. That's what I heard about high school football. Now, here I am, and it's my junior year of high school football, and I'm injured. I'm injured. I injured my ankle. I can't play. I mean, I'm not necessarily, I'm no asset to the team. I'm just more of kind of a cheerleader now, just in football pads. That's what I became. And that was fine. That was my role. But at the end of my junior year, my mom comes up to me one day. She says, oh, one of my friends who used to live here in Hope moved to a place in Georgia called Dalton, which is an hour and a half northwest of Atlanta. She moved there about 2 years ago, and she's asking us if we want to come for a little vacation. What do you say? Yes. Because I had heard one of those 3 places, Georgia, and we're going there. This was my opportunity to possibly move, in my mind. So I'm 17 years old. We go to Georgia. We hang out for about 2 or 3 days, and then, I loved it. I really enjoyed it. My mom liked it. We came back to Arkansas, and I kept nudging my mom the whole drive back to Arkansas. Mom, you like Georgia, right? You like it? And she was like, yeah, I like it. I was like, so we can move, right? We're going to move. And she's like, relax. Like, we're not going to move yet. I have a job. You still have your senior year of high school. There's a lot of moving parts here. It just can't happen like that. We got to take our time. Well, of course, when you're that young, you're impatient, you're stubborn, and you feel invisible, right? So we get home. My mom goes to bed. She wakes up a few hours later just to find me standing on the couch, in the living room couch. And she says, what are you doing? And I turned around, and I'm holding a picture frame that was on the wall. And she says, what are you doing? I said, I'm packing. And she's like, what do you mean you're packing? Where are you going? I was like, we're moving to Georgia. She's like, I told you, we're not moving to Georgia yet. Not yet. I'm impatient. So I presented a plan to her, and I said, this is what, the summer is now here. What I'll do is I'll go to Georgia for 2 weeks, and for 2 weeks, I'll try to get a job. If I can get a job in those 2 weeks, then I can stay and you have to move to Georgia. If I don't get a job in those 2 weeks, then I'll come back and I'll finish out my senior year here in Hope. Plan. She said, okay, deal. Because she thought, 1, I wasn't going to get a job, but 2, that I was going to get, house sick and I was going to miss mom and I was going to come running back. Well, she learned. Because I got to Georgia. It was right after my birthday, and I jumped on a Greyhound bus, because that's all we can afford. I got a ticket, and here I was going from Arkansas, an 18-year-old kid from Arkansas, all the way to Georgia. Now, how many people here have been on a Greyhound bus? Yeah, pretty much everybody, right? You can say, I'm going to purchase a Greyhound ticket right now to go from, which we're on, 53rd, and you just want to go downtown. which is probably 50 blocks away from here. It's going to take you 2 days to get there. Something about Greyhound buses, it takes you forever, and then you're going to have 15 stories by the time from here to there. So needless to say, it took me like 4 days to get to Georgia. I get to Georgia on a Sunday night. Monday morning, I go to the main job that's in Dalton, Georgia. Dalton, Georgia.